Hello guys, today I'll be teaching you how to set up a Manjaro Gnome box on Gnome boxes. Gnome boxes is essentially a program that allows you to use well, virtual machines, and if you don't know what a virtual machine is it's essentially a computer that can be run virtually, or in layman's terms almost emulated, but that's not necessarily the correct term, of a computer environment. Now, you may ask, well, what is Manjaro Gnome? Well, Manjaro Gnome is a Linux distribution that is pretty well known for beginners due to its simple, easy, and simplistic use. A lot of people really recommend it. So, as I'm currently setting up the virtual machine, uh, let me just get it to 100 gigabytes, and we are good. Anyways, boxes, if you don't necessarily know how to get it, you can pretty much get it from every major Linux repository, whether it's apt or Pacman, or even I forget what it is for Gen 2. Oh, it's Portage, RPM for Fedora, and I think it usually just goes look up GNOME boxes in your repository, and you should be able to find it. It does also ship with most GNOME distros, so there's also that. So anyways, let's get right into this. Now, this is also going to be a pretty good tutorial for those that are trying to install Linux natively onto their computer. So this is just for example purposes only. So let's start. So let me just create the virtual machine. Now, let's say you're booting and you've already put in your USB drive and into your computer. Now, I'm not going to go too much over the process that it requires for you to, what's the word, to boot up Linux onto your computer. That's a whole different video. I will be posting a video on how to make a live USB, or just a USB for Linux to install this. So anyways, when that comes out, just kind of see this as the part 2. Okay, so let's say you've just booted into Manjaro Linux. You pretty much just want to exit out of this. You don't necessarily need anything here. There's, I'm going to do a general overview, but you've pretty much got your forums, which are great for support. I've used these a lot when I've had trouble with Manjaro. Discover software, which is how you basically find software on the repositories, online at least. And there's the wiki, which is just general help and stuff like that. So anyways, you're going to want to exit out of this, and you're pretty much going to want to go down here to the little disk icon here, which is install Manjaro Linux. Double click on that, or single click it, whatever makes it spin and open up. And you pretty much select your language. Mine's obviously American English. Next, America, select your time zone. Pretty much default is New York, but let's say if you live in, like, I don't know, Germany, you can check, like, select it up here, but we're gonna stay in New York. English, 100 generic, 105 key PC. Now if you have like a custom keyboard or something, like a smaller form factor, you could change this, but you don't really need to if you're on a laptop or something. Now this is the part that you probably need to pay attention to the most. There's two options here when you're usually when there will be when let's say you have Windows or another distribution on your computer, there should be another option that appears here that I think says like split partition or something along the lines of, what is it? Install alongside. You don't want to do that unless you're like dual booting, which is a whole different other can of worms. But if you just want to install just Linux onto your machine and uninstall everything else, keep in mind that this will delete all Windows files and all the data you have on your computer. So remember to back that up. Generally is a very good rule of thumb before you wipe your hard drive or install a new distribution or operating system. I will make a video on that soon. Alright, so just click erase disk, Now, you pretty much just want to do swap to file. That's pretty good rule of thumb. But if you want hibernate, which is essentially just sleep state, you can choose that, but it will take up some of your actual storage. And swap is essentially just RAM. It's fake RAM, pretty much. It's fake RAM that's slower than normal RAM. But it's, yeah, pretty much it's what can be written. If let's say you have a bunch of programs open and you need them to be written to the RAM, it will be written to swap instead. So if for now, or anyone that isn't using sleep or hibernate, you can do swap to file. I recommend to most people, just for security purposes, to encrypt your system. Pretty much just try a strong passphrase. For this one, we're pretty just gonna do just the old 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5. Next, and your full name. Let's just call it Manjaro. Choose a password. We're gonna do even shorter. 1 2 3. Next. Just keep hitting next on for all of these. Just from here, go next. Fill in your information. This is what your name will be when you log in. Password. I recommend clicking use the same password for administrator account just to make things easier. Administrator account, this usually is only used, the administrator password is when you pretty much need to run anything as root, which is essentially just something that requires elevated privileges on your computer. For example, like installing a certain program or something like that. So just click next. Install now. Now pretty much you just have to wait on this, so I'll skip on this and see when it's done. Alright, now that it's done, you can pretty much just click restart now and it will automatically restart your machine when you press done. So let's just press done. It will reboot. Just give it a minute. And whenever you boot up your machine and it's encrypted, this pretty much means that no one will be able to access it, even if they have, for example, when you put a password on something like operating system like Windows, it won't actually encrypt your files, so people can still, if they get physical access to your machine, at least can acquire those files that you have on your PC and put them onto a USB drive, or recover the files in pretty much any way possible, because the password doesn't actually protect the files, it just protects the login. It's what you would call weaker security. So anyways, it's, well, not necessarily weaker security, but it just doesn't cover that part. So pretty much put in your password, whatever you put. Now it will not show up as text, and that's completely normal. Just give it a minute. It will take a little bit to decrypt your hard drive, and it should respond. There you go. Decrypt the hard drive. Should boot up in a minute. There it is. And you can just select your profile, which is Manjaro. And whatever you put within, not your encrypted passphrase that you selected that we just did, do the one that you did when you filled out all your login information. So pretty much you're just going to want to exit out of this. Once again, I recommend pressing not to launch at start, toggling this off, simply because it's just going to, well, it's going to show up every time you boot onto your PC, and it really isn't that necessary, and you can pretty much access it at any time. So we're just going to switch that off for convenience purposes. So here's pretty much your GNOME Manjaro machine, pretty much. Now, whenever you boot up Linux or any Linux distribution in general, I highly recommend that you update all of your packages. This will generally just help with in boosting the security on your machine and overall make it run better. So there's two ways of doing this. There's the terminal way. Now, that I really only recommend for those that are trying to just get their feet wet in the terminal, just trying to get a little bit more experience. But for beginners, I highly recommend just using the add and remove software app. Well, it's not app, but the program, which will pretty much which is a front-end GUI graphical user interface that you can use to install programs. So let's say for example, we're looking for something as simple as VLC, which is a media player. It will show up here, and you can click install. So the way you install it is you just click install and choose optional dependencies. We're not going to do any of these for now, but you can install what you want. And the authentication password, once again, is the one that you use to log in, not to decrypt your hard drive. Hit apply. Right now it's upgrading the Linux Arch Linux keyring, which essentially is a way to verify that the packages and programs and files are coming from the actual developers themselves and aren't tampered with in transit or anything like that. So it's a great way to boost security program-wise, and it's one of the main reasons why Linux is, well, more secure than Windows, due to its almost, not necessarily centralized, but almost federated way of assigning packages and more streamlined. So it's just gonna upgrade. Alright, there seemed to have been a problem with the package manager. It's a bug that I've encountered in the past. But generally, I really recommend just using the terminal when you are upgrading packages. Now, I'm going to teach you guys a few commands on how to manage software and packages. When I say packages, I mean programs, files, dependencies, which are essentially just programs that can work with a larger program. That's a very simplified version. I bet there's a lot of people in the comment section that could probably argue with me, but I mean, I have a very surface level knowledge of Linux and stuff. So the command that you should know is sudo. Now sudo means run it as administrator, so this means you get root access to your computer, which is pretty much means if you've ever been on Windows, it says can you allow you to make changes to this computer, and that's kind of the equivalent of what it's doing. Now pacman, which stands for package manager, but it's just called pacman for short. This right here, dash, means these are not parameters but options that you can do when you're trying to download something. So S would be which stands for sync, but what I think it stands for is really just download and install. So let's say you want to download VLC, you do sudo pacman s dash capital S, keep in mind it's capital S, space VLC to download the VLC program. But right now we're just going to try to upgrade our system, which would be dash SYU. Now pretty much what this will do is it will upgrade it will download all the new packages, update the repositories. Will not update the repositories, but it will update pretty much everything on your system. Now since this is a fresh install, I recommend doing SYYU, which will force update all the repositories. So just enter this. Now you're going to need to enter your password, the one that you logged in with. It's going to synchronize the package databases. Now replace it. Now you can just ignore that. Here, let me just do that again. That was kind of bugging for a minute. Now, since this is a relatively outdated ISO, there will be a good amount, for me at least. For you, it may be different. And yes. Now, pretty much I got stalled at just downloading the packages. Right now it's checking keys and keyring and checking the package integrity. And keys are essentially, I think they're like the signatures of the developers. And package integrity pretty much means that all the files are there, everything's all good, as well as verifying that it is a legitimate file. And pretty much it's just going to do this kind of cool thing where it pretty much upgrades all of your packages, does any configurations that it needs to do. And you may be asking, why do they need to be outputting all this text? And this is pretty much just for the purpose of logs and to troubleshoot issues if there is any. Alright. Now after this, you pretty much wanna just type in a reboot, and it will reboot your computer. This is pretty much no-brainer and pretty standard for when you fully update your system or update. Yeah, just pretty much do a full system update. If you're installing just new packages or updating new packages, I don't think you really need to do it. But if you're updating system, things like the kernel and stuff like that, then I recommend it. So let's just log in here. Give it a minute to decrypt the hard drive. Just enter the password that you used to once again. Now, as you can see, it looks different. This means that you pretty much GNOME was updated, packages, and other stuff. So, yeah, that's pretty much about it. You can now use your system however you like it. It will come up with I think a pretty good amount of tools that you can use on already pre-installed. But if you ever need to look up something, pretty much the internet is your best friend. Reddit, the forums, whenever you're looking for a program where you need help, go to the forums, YouTube, internet, Reddit, really pretty much anywhere will pretty much help you. Just stay clear of any funny sites or people that are simply shitposting and trying to lead you in the wrong direction. Anyways, this is pretty much my first video, so pardon the rustiness. So anyways, remember to like and subscribe, and keep on thinking. Out.